Hello and welcome to today's episode of another Pointless Podcast. Today we're going to be discussing monolinguistic culture and how speaking one language is kind of harmful to American culture, but not only the culture, our global position in things like business and cognitive development as well. We're going to get into a little bit of brain science as well. But I'm here with my friend Matteo Done. And we're going to be talking about languages because he's got a pretty good history with speaking multiple languages. I'm going to let him kind of talk about his background and his history with languages and where he's from. And then after that, we'll get into discussing the topic at hand.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be here at this new episode. So my name is Matteo Done. I'm originally from Switzerland. I grew up speaking French, but in my country we also speak Swiss German and Swiss Italian. Therefore, when I went to high school, I had to learn another language from my country, so I decided to get some German. And in the meantime of learning German, English was proposed by the high school, so I've studied English for about 4 years. And then I complete my knowledge of English by traveling, by going to places and talking with people, which I think is the best way to develop any kind of languages and skills. And it's going to be super interesting today to compare some, how could I say this? Some different culture, different views from European to American languages.
Exactly. So one of the first things I talked about was how speaking multiple languages has shown to improve cognitive development, your actual ability to make decisions and executive brain power. We talked about one study where they took a bunch of kids, bilingual and monolingual, and they took them through different memory tasks. And basically, they had different levels of memory tasks that were simple and difficult. And across all boards, the bilingual children performed better. Simple and even performed much better in the difficult category. But I kind of wanted to talk about a story that we kind of went through over the summer. So I was actually in Geneva visiting him, and we went to a family friend of his house for dinner when I guess it was actually in France because they live on the border. So we'll get into that too. But at this family friend's house, they had a bunch of kids, and the kids were running around just switching off languages. They knew like 3 languages. I'll let you kind of talk about it because you know more about the family and stuff. But yeah, you go ahead.
Yeah, so it's a blessing for those kids that their parents decided to educate them like this. Because so the parents are originally from Switzerland and the Italian part of Switzerland, so they speak French and Italian very well. For business, the father had to travel a lot and develop English skills throughout his life, and he decided to put his kid in Switzerland in an international school. So they live in Switzerland. At home, they speak mainly French and Italian. And during the daytime at school, their international school where they speak English. And throughout they're pretty young. They're probably between now 7 and 9 years old, and they can speak to you in French, in Italian, or in English. And it doesn't matter if you start in French and you end up in English because they've been taught so young. Their brain developed and still developing around those roots. So that's just crazy. That's an advantage for their life.
Yeah, it was crazy. We were sitting down eating dinner, and these kids were running around just playing with each other like kids do, but they were switching off between 3 different languages. Like one person would say something in English, and then somebody would respond in Italian, and then someone would say something in French, and they'd all just kind of without even thinking about it having understanding. And it was obvious to see that these kids were smarter than the average kids, and I think it had a lot to do with hearing different languages at a young age, and like even when they're like a baby before they can even really think about it, having to process multiple languages coming at you at a different time, it's gotta wire your brain a little bit better, so these kids were obviously just very smart for their age, just geniuses.
Yeah, geniuses, and that's such a good thing that through education they give the possibility to for a country like Switzerland with such divided by languages to learn the languages from the other part in order to communicate between us.
Yeah, and that's kind of what's so opposed to here is that we don't learn any other languages. I mean, I think it's 1/4 of elementary schools even offer a second language program. So kids aren't being exposed to any other language but English until high school. And then when they get to high school, it's like their English is I wouldn't even say so advanced, but so the only thing in their brain that it impedes with their ability to learn other languages, and they drop it. And even that, the schools don't make it too much of a priority either. Like I know going to high school here, it was obviously the core subjects were the priority, and then you kind of had to take maybe 2 years of a language. But in 2 years of a language in a classroom setting where you're only hearing it an hour for maybe 2 days out of the week, you're not going to learn anything.
It's not effective at all. I can tell you every single student that I've talked with that took French throughout their education in high school, they do it because it was mandatory for them and they didn't get any positive outcome out of it. They don't know it right now. They know a couple words, and that's whereas maybe in Europe they see this as more an opportunity to like gain new skills. Here the perception should change to say, oh, that's even if it's Spanish. I mean, Spanish is spoken by multiple million in civilization throughout the world. So
yeah, it's a perfect transition into our next topic because Spanish is the second most spoken language in the United States. It's that 37 million people speak Spanish in the U.S. as their first language, and the approach to schools teaching a language like Spanish is non-existent. They don't do anything to help improve the multiple cultures that are here. Because I mean, it's a good percentage of the United States that is speaking Spanish on a regular basis. And then it brings a negative connotation into other cultures because if we're not taught that in school and it's not a priority in school, when we're little and you hear other kids speaking Spanish, you kind of look at it as weird and like not okay, or even and it kind of becomes like a dirty or bad thing, and it shouldn't be at all. It should be embraced, and we should learn to speak multiple languages because it helps us be more accepting of other cultures as well. Because when you understand language, you have to understand so much about a culture too, because they're so intertwined. That's why I think the difference is in Europe, because there's so many languages right there and close together, so it's an opportunity to like learn more about each other, I would say.
yeah, it's definitely an opportunity to learn about each other and just to open up to the world, because I mean we're living in a globalized world. I mean, most of the countries in the world are developed or in the way of development, and if we're not we are, I see I have a view where you have to be open to the world, to exchanges, to culture, to trade between country, and in this specific field, speaking multiple languages is that giving more opportunity for whatever it can be, business or politics or education.
Yeah.
You can touch a larger amount of people.
Exactly.
If you can directly communicate with them.
Well, I mean, in the 21st century, we've seen this rapid globalization where the world is no longer... The U.S., at one point, the reason we weren't learning other languages is because we're so isolated geographically. There was no need, I guess, because we were only doing business with other Americans. It wasn't a global market, but with the invention of the internet and then just faster trade routes and better technology, I mean, the world is global now. The market is global. Business is global. It's almost become no longer feasible for business people to only speak one language. I mean, globally speaking, there were I think it was 31% of business executives speak 2 languages, 20% speak 3, 9% speak 4, and 4% speak more than 4 languages. So that's 2/3 of business executives around the world that can speak multiple languages. And if it's not prioritized in American education, then we're not going to be doing anything like that at all. I mean, your dad, I know he's a developed businessman in Switzerland, and that's part of his job, is going around the world and having to speak multiple languages and talk to different people. So yeah, if you want to kind of get into that too.
Yeah, I can give you 2 examples, 2 very good examples actually. One is my father, as you mentioned, is working in the banking sector in Switzerland, and his bank is international, so he had to travel a lot. Not with America, but in Italy, a lot in Netherlands, Bahamas, all those countries. So speaking English, speaking Italian, and being able to speak French was obviously something that people remember. They say, "Oh, you able to address to that much amount of people in that much amount of languages. So you're obviously smart." And it creates connection. It creates connection very easily. And the other example I can mention is my brother, who finishing his degree in hospitality, and throughout his degree he had to do multiple internship. So he was studying Spanish at school and lived for about a year in Barcelona. So now he's perfectly fluent with Spanish. English, he had developed this throughout high school and university, so he's able also. That creates job opportunity for him to just work wherever, can be in an English speaking country or in an European country. It really creates possibility for life to speak multiple languages.
Yeah, I mean, the networking is obviously a great example because if you can talk to multiple people all over the world, they're obviously going to, like you said, take notice to the fact that you can understand them and talk with them on that level in a different language, and it's going to create a lot of opportunities, a lot more jobs that you probably wouldn't have had otherwise. I mean, even in the U.S., employers are looking for people who speak multiple languages. Like, there's a 1.5% premium for Spanish speakers, a 2.3% for French speakers, and a 3.8% premium for German speakers. That's a pay on your average wage, and even though those values seem small over your career, 1.5% is going to equate to a lot more earnings. So it's an opportunity that's here, and it's obvious that it's in the business world, and it's like employers are prioritizing that. And for us, the goal of education is to get a job, it feels like almost. So like we get educated so we can get out and get a job. And if the market is looking for people that speak multiple languages, why are we not prioritizing it in the schools? It just doesn't add up, you know? It's kind of like this language learning curve, this disconnect that we have. I mean, it's sad because I feel like it impedes with our ability to get a lot of opportunities, a lot more jobs, and just kind of understand the world. So I mean, in Europe, it's so much different because like I know you guys, a lot of you learn English for the business aspect, right? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, living in Switzerland, if you want to do any sort of business at some international level, you have to speak English. And you've been taught pretty early in Europe at school to speak English. What I want to come back is what you said about not valorizing the teaching of a language throughout high school, where we're living in a system where if you don't go to college, if you don't go to high school, you don't have this piece of paper that the employer is looking for to hire you. So if that diploma, that degree is that much important, maybe we should also valorize here the teaching of this language within degrees and maybe develop that aspect for people who doesn't find their wish in high school or colleges.
Yeah, they can have another opportunity to explore more parts of the world through that education, and maybe it'll lead them to a better place where they'll be able to get a nicer job or provide better for their families. But thank you so much for talking today. It was really good. We went over everything about about language. I mean, we got into brain power, the business world, and culture too. So I just want to say thank you, and then if there's anything you want to say goodbye or whatever you need to.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to discuss this today, and I hope that you guys gonna listen to this and spread the word about how important languages is to develop your personal and business life.